everybody, so here we are for our first video, and our first video is going to be on auctions, and we've got somebody perfect to talk to you about it, and that's Ron Thompson, a solicitor that also owns a conveyancing firm. Ron, what I want you to do is give me the 5 top tips when buying at auction.
Yeah, quite simple. My 5 top tips will be: always view the property and the surrounding area before you're going to buy it. Do as much due diligence as you can. Get your finances in place before you go to the auction and purchase a property. I would say always get the legal pack reviewed by a solicitor. Even experienced people can miss things on the special conditions. And finally, caveat emptor. One of the few bits of Latin I do know as a solicitor, and it's buyer beware. So, check everything you need to check, warts and all, before you go to the auction and put it in a bid.
So there's some amazing top 5 tips. What I want to do is just elaborate a bit more. This is where we're going to add value to you, and this is what our aim is to do. So everybody that's listening, we want to make sure that you know. So working at auctions, or say buying at auctions, should I say, buying at auctions is a great opportunity, but you need to follow the certain top tips. Now, these are Ron's 5 top tips, and they will keep you safe. But what you need to do is look at the opportunity as well. So look at what you're going to be buying at auction to make sure it's a deal for you, and look at your exits and work back. But what I want to do now is to talk a bit more about what Ron just said. So Ron, if we can elaborate, let's talk a bit about view your property in the area, which is top tip number 1. Let's talk why. Why do we need to do that?
Yeah, well, everybody's after a bargain, and a lot of people think, oh, auction properties, there must be something wrong with it, the selling at auction. That might not be the case, but also it could be the case as well. Now, tactically, and I only realised this myself a couple of years ago, you might live up north and your property's up north, but then you find the property in a southern auction, sort of down in London, and people think, well, why is somebody up north, with a property up north, selling their property in a southern auction? Tactically, it makes absolute sense. You can buy a house. I'm from Whitehaven up in Cumbria. You can still buy a house in Whitehaven, 50 grand. Right now, where are you going to buy a house in London for 50 grand? You put that house in Whitehaven in a southern auction, 75 grand. Somebody's going to say that in London and say, God, I'm never going to get a 3-bedroom, 70-detached house for 70 grand in London. And they think it's a great buy. It may well be a great buy for them. And if everybody's happy and they all walk away happy with the deal, great. But tactically, you'll find properties in auction locations that you might not expect to buy them. And it's tactics because houses are much more expensive down south than they are up north. So the northern people are trying to get a better deal for their property, which might work in a southern auction, and the southern folk are buying a cheaper property than they would get in London, but still paying more for the property than you would expect up north. So it's always good to look at the area, see what's going on, see is there any tactics behind it. But I think it's a must to view the property, because at the end of the day, you're going to buy it at the auction if you're successful. And once you're successful, that property is yours.
Great. So that for me, it's really important. You need to know what you're going to buy.
Yeah.
You need to know where to look. And I think a good top tip is sources, for example. So you could go to a source or somebody in that area, or find somebody in that local area. So if you're from down south or even overseas and you are looking to buy, make sure that you go and find somebody that is credible, that you can trust, that can view that property for you. Yeah, you might pay, but they're there to be your eyes and ears. What I would suggest is as well, and this is just, sorry, Ron, I'm jumping on with a bit of my top tips, if that's okay. And that would be, make sure that they record the key areas. So I would say the key areas are the bathroom, the kitchen, the boilers, to make sure that they're okay. But also, I'd like to go 0.5 fish lens on my phone, and I'll go from corner to corner and video every part of that house. Now, you might think that's quite laborious, and it is. But for a 20-minute video, the person that's buying gets a big picture of what they're buying and why. And just take it outside. Example that what you'd be looking for is when you're looking at a boiler, make sure you go underneath, over top and around the side, look for any burn marks or marks, make sure that it's been serviced, so if the servicing certificate's there. When you're going around the kitchens, making sure that you open drawers, shut drawers, looking at the ovens, making sure it's in working orders. Turn it on, turn it off, turn on lights, turn them back off. And then as you're walking around, you're making sure it's safe. And same with the bathroom. Just look at the tiles. Go a bit closer when you're in the bathroom, looking at the tiles, looking at the fitments, looking at where the watermarks and the staining is, looking at the floor, turning on the taps, turning off the taps, those sort of things. And this is we're just scratching the surface here, guys. So hopefully it's added value. But that's really good advice, Ron.
Yeah, just quite a. I think a funny example on that is a property we were actually looking at, a commercial residential property up north. I won't tell you exactly where that. It was a commercial property with the residential potential on the being marketed as a tanning salon and bridal shop, appointments only. It sounded great, you know, all the figures stacked up. When we did go and view it and do a bit more digging, what kind of enterprise would you think uses huge amounts of electric and massive great lights? Yeah. Exactly, a tanning salon. Also, a cannabis factory. So we actually found out it wasn't a bridal shop and not a tanning factory. That was just the cover for the cannabis factory that explained the high electric costs in the building. But you know, it meant a lot more work was required. And we pulled up when we actually found out that it was a grower, not a tanning salon.
Well, you could have done a deal with that, Ron. There's always a deal to be made, and you could have actually asked them, can we have part of the profits, or could we take a few plants in part of the deal? I'm sure that had been allowed. But that's why it's important. So great for your first one. If you're happy, let's go on to top tip number 2, which is carry out your due diligence.
Yeah, it's important to carry out as much due diligence as you can. I know everybody's infallible, and you can't. No one, you know, often you're not going to get it 100% certain. But we see people that, you know, they'll buy on spec at auction and carry out absolutely no due diligence. But then we get people go on the other end of the scale that, you know, they're looking at everything in minute detail. But you know, if you can carry out a decent amount of due diligence, you're far better off doing that. That might be things like, you know, a Google search and the local planning portals. Look at is there any enforcement orders against the property? Look at the EPC register, see what it stands at the moment. And if all else fails and you still buy the property, look at the local housing authority rates. If you need to rent it out, you know, there's always vulnerable people and needing houses. So if you can't turn to service accommodation, for example, or an AST, you may well, if it's up to spec, the local authority may rent it off you for, you know, potentially a 25-year lease. So, you know, there is options, even though you think it might not be a good one.
Which is great. Another top tip. And that brings me on to a point that quite often when I'm sat down with mentees, I sit down and I chat to them. They don't know all the exits. So know your exits and work your due diligence out for that. But don't discount any exits, because you might have an exit that actually increases the value of it commercially, that then you can buy it residentially, turn it into a commercial premise, pull more money out. We can talk about this later because we're going into auctions here. But then before everything that comes before that, once you realise what you're going to do with your exits, that's where your due diligence comes in. What we should do is later on, we'll do another video if you're interested, and we'll create something on doing due diligence per exit. Now, the list won't be exhaustive, but it'd be a great starter for 10, where at least you can elaborate from it. Excuse me. You can elaborate from it, and you can make sure that it fits for you, and you're making sure when you buy something, you're de-risking it. But yeah, another great top tip, Ron. Right, so should we go on to the tip number 3, which is get your finances in place early. So I like this one, and I'm looking forward to your response.
Yeah,
should we do that?
I think unfortunately people still turn up at auctions and think it's like buying a house via estate agents, and it's really not, because if your bid's successful, and the grabble falls and you've won, you have bought that property. There's no great, I've got 10%. So it's not, you've bought it. Then you'll be expected to pay the 10% deposit immediately. There's normally an auction charge before that to secure a part of that fee. But once that's done, you've bought it. And now you normally have 28 days to 56 days to complete the purchase. But if you pull out of that purchase, there can be significant consequences for that. You'll probably have to pay all the vendor's costs of the auction sales. You might, if they then sell that property at a lower price than you've paid, you may be responsible for paying them the difference in them two prices. So it's important that when you go, you've at the very least got your finances for the 10% deposit in place. You know, you may think of bridging finance after that to complete the purchase in the timescales, because it's not a long time. We've got mortgage specialists and brokers that can provide a mortgage in between you paying the deposit at auction and then completing the purchase. So that can be done really quickly. But I would say it's really important that you do have all your finances in place before you go to the auction and bid on something, because if you're successful, you've bought it.
Exactly. And I see this happening time and time again, where people have bought something and think, oh God, I need to get the finance now. And it causes so much stress. They can get it done, but it's so much stress. But I've also seen others that haven't got it done. So stand by. If you make an auction bid and it wins and you're the highest bidder, as soon as that gavel goes bang, you're liable to pay something.
Yeah.
So even if you can't get your finances, you will pay.
Yeah.
So just that's probably one of the best tips, and one that I really like for this one. Next tip. So the next tip was legal pack review via a solicitor. Now, people will be saying right now, well, Ron's a solicitor. Of course he's going to say that. But I'm really interested in why you're saying that, because I know the other side is, once we've had discussions, because we've chatted about this before, why it's important.
Yeah, I'm not pushing the fact that I'm a solicitor at all, or that we have a conveyancing firm that does a lot of auction packs reviews. It doesn't bother me if you use our firm or you use another, but it's really important to the purchaser. And I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm an experienced property developer and property investor. I know what a legal pack says and I know what to look at. That's great. If they're confident in doing that, brilliant. I hope it never goes belly up for them. But there's a section of the legal pack called special conditions. Now, that can include absolutely anything that the vendor wants to put in. Now, if the vendor puts in, the buyer will pay for me a family holiday in the Caribbean for the month of August for the next 5 years, and you don't see it, well, that's what you'll be doing, because it's a special condition and part of the sale. Another bit of a horror story with that is we had an example of an experienced property developer, an investor, bought two properties in the north at £60,000, absolute bargain. Now, them two properties were a bargain at 60,000 quid. What he didn't do was he didn't read the legal pack properly, and he didn't get it reviewed by a solicitor. And lo and behold, one of the special conditions was he had to repay the unpaid rent on the two properties to the vendor as part of the sale. That amounted to another 60,000 quid. So all of a sudden, his bargain is no longer a bargain.
No.
But he stuck with it. He done it himself, contacted us afterwards and said, do I have to pay the 60 grand? And the answer was, well, you either pay it or you pull out the sale and get penalised. So choice is yours at that point in time. And that's all for the sake of 300, 400 quid to get somebody to review a legal pack for you. And all joking aside, there's also confidence and accountability if you get a solicitor review your legal pack. Because if the solicitor gets something wrong, they have professional indemnity insurance, and you can then sue the solicitor. A lot of solicitors might be cringing and say that I'm actually telling you to do that. But you know, why?
It's the right thing to do.
Why? Yeah, absolutely. If I made a mistake, I would put my hands up, and I'd expect to be accountable for that mistake. A lot of people aren't accountable for what they do wrong. So I'm all for solicitors getting sued if they make a mistake, whether it be genuine lack of knowledge or whatever. That the insurance is in place to cover that process. And why should the individual consumer lose out because a solicitor's made a mistake? That's not one as far as I'm concerned.
No, it's a great top tip. And there are various other top tips, isn't there, with the when you're talking about the legal pack. That legal pack can be changed, can't it, up to the point of sale, up to an hour before? Is that correct?
It's certainly certainly a day before. So you need to constantly check the legal pack. So you might get a legal pack 2 weeks before the auction, but 2 days before the auction, that legal pack might change. So you need to keep reviewing it to make sure nothing's been added to in particular, the special conditions section.
Yeah, and the other thing that with auctions is the bidding. So sometimes they can push the bids up, can't they?
Yeah.
Which
yeah, like
I know it's not in the legal pack, but it's, for me, I don't think that's playing with a straight bat, as we say.
No,
I don't think that's correct.
No.
Pushing the bids up. I think somebody that's connected to the property is allowed to push the bids up for a certain amount of time till it meets the reserve.
Yeah.
Which is,
you know, you set your price and don't go above it. That's another top tip that isn't on this list. You know, if you want
bonus.
A bonus one. If you say, right, I'll pay 50 grand for that property, once it is 50 grand and you haven't got it, don't go above your price. It's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great top tip. Great bonus top tip as well. Stick to it. Make sure you don't go above it. And even though you've got a bargain, you will make it work. Yeah. It's not the bargain that you wanted. And sometimes, actually, it's not a bargain because you've gone above what you want to do. Right, last one. I'm not going to say say it in Latin, but buyers beware. Makes me feel like Jack Sparrow, but buyers beware. Ron, what does that mean and why?
Yeah, well, the Latin is caveat emptor. I don't know a lot of Latin, and I don't use a lot of Latin. Fortunately, the legal profession has moved on, and not everything's in Latin anymore. But caveat emptor does mean buyer beware. And as I said, once the hammer falls, you've bought it. If you haven't done your due diligence, which was tip number 2, you might find out later on down the line that you've bought a bit of a red herring, to put it politely. You know, yeah. So check the rights of way on the property. You know, you don't want somebody trudging through your garden every day because there's been a public footpath there, and you get the ramblers wandering through. Not there's that wrong with ramblers. Good on them. Check the drainage. You know that everything's working as it should be. You know, it's easy done. Get a survey done before you buy the property. Tenancy info on the property. Check the tenancy info. If it's has got a tenant in place, how long's the tenancy left? Are you happy with them to stay in place and rent it from you? Would you want them to move if you want to change the entity to serviced accommodation, for example? You know, you need to terminate one tenancy and remove them as legally as you can, you know, and morally as you can as well. Don't just throw them out. And check the land charges. You know, what is there anything registered against the property? Is there any enforcement notices against the property? You know, if you're buying a mid-terraced house and you think, oh, that'll be great, a nice quiet place, check the houses on either side and party houses that are already serviced accommodation. So just do as much as you can before you actually buy the property at the auction. I think that's a massive tip for anybody who's thinking of buying it. And people should buy at auctions, man. You get some really good deals. There is between 40 and 60,000 sales per year. And the only reason I'm emphasising the word sales is that on a presentation recently, I did say there was 40 to 60,000 ales a year, and people thought that was how much I was drinking every year, which would be a bit of a chore. But you know, it is important to check everything as much as you can, really.
Yeah, it is, and it's really good. Thanks for them top tips, Ron. Auctions are very good, like what you mentioned. You summarised it quite well. Very, very good to pick up some decent bargains. But make sure you do due diligence, that you check the area well. Sorry, I've gone out of order with these. Get your finances in place early. You look at the legal pack and get a solicitor to look over the legal pack to make sure you're not going to get caught. And caveat emptor, buyers beware. Just make sure you follow them all, because these will keep you safe. Now, these are Ron's top tips, so they're not exhaustive. Make sure you've got other top tips that you add as well to yourself for the different areas that you're looking to buy in. If you're from the UK and you're out of the area, or if you're from overseas and you're looking to find out more, give us a quick message and we'll try and answer your questions. And if you need connecting to anybody that can find these properties, let us know. All right, thank you, Ron, for that. Really appreciate it.